Between 4th and 2nd grade, I was very invested in a small Minecraft server dedicated to building. The average age of the players was 15 to 17, and we spent hours chatting every day on Skype. Very quickly we became close and we all followed each other on social networks. I got very close to one player, his name was Peter. He was in the same class as me, even though we didn't go to the same high school. I had heard rumors that he had a crush on me, rumors that he denied. It made me laugh because we only knew each other online. At first everything was fine, but little by little I began to feel uneasy during our conversations. I began to catch him in little lies, which annoyed me, so I decided to distance myself and stop talking to him. A few months later, when we were no longer in touch, Peter sent me a message out of nowhere. He told me he was considering changing high schools to come to mine so he could benefit from state tuition. His plan? Living alone, getting by financially while finishing high school. My stomach got knotted. All of this seemed very disturbing and out of nowhere. I tried to stay calm and told him his plan was insane. It was strange that my high school was chosen. He insisted it was a pure coincidence and that everything was going to work out. I was still hoping he was bluffing, but shortly after, he told me that he had already bought his plane tickets to visit my high school and stay in my city. Fear took over me when I realized that Peter was totally serious, and that he had developed an unhealthy obsession with me. He wasn't bluffing. Even worse, he posted a picture on Snapchat from the airport. He suggested we meet during his stay. I refused. Later he posted more stories showing him taking a tour of my high school, filming and taking pictures, probably in the hope that I would see them. Luckily that day, I was at home with pneumonia, so I didn't have to confront him. For the next few days I was constantly on the qui vive, terrified that it would show up at my house. Fortunately, he never managed to find out where I lived and he ended up going home, abandoning his project. What shocked me was that the rest of the online group never found his behavior odd. I felt like I was the only one who saw something alarming. I hoped that by refusing to see him and keeping quiet, he'd leave me alone. But 2 years later, right after I announced that I had been accepted into the university of my dreams, Peter reappeared. I had been foolish enough to keep following him on the networks to check that he wasn't lurking around. And then I saw a picture of him posing in front of the libraries at my university with this caption, "Transferring me here is clearly the right plan." I don't know if he really did, but I never ran into him on campus. A few months later, he found out I had a boyfriend. He contacted me on Skype for the first time in 2 years. Do you think he can protect you out of fear? I immediately blocked it and removed it from all my networks. I admit I've made mistakes. At the time I was young, scared, and surrounded by people who kept telling me it wasn't that bad. He hasn't contacted me since, but that doesn't mean he's not watching me today. This is the story that taught me things in the worst possible way. You can roll your eyes and point out all the bad decisions I've made, and you'd be right. But I sincerely believe that you can only make good decisions by learning from bad experiences. I am a girl, and I had a friend at the time who I considered a brother. Someone I could confide in and in whom I had complete confidence. I met him at school during a 4th grade sports day. We'll call him Joshua. It was the last day before the holidays. We hung out with a group, we laughed, we had fun. Then we added on Facebook. He didn't write to me right away. It was only in the middle of the holidays that he sent me a message, a simple greeting, just to check in on me. I was very lonely at the time and hadn't had a real friend since elementary school, so I was flattered. We started talking regularly, and when I moved, he told me that he lived only 10 or 15 minutes from my house. It meant we could see each other from time to time. I was thrilled. I had never invited friends over before. It was new to me. A year later, we became best friends and had the same interests. We walked around town, we went to the movies, we swam, we confided our secrets. We did everything together. But that's where everything started to fall apart. Joshua wanted more than friendship, but I didn't feel the same way at all. I already had a boyfriend in Charlie, and Joshua knew it very well. He spent his time saying that Charlie didn't deserve me, that he didn't respect me, or that he said bad things about me behind my back. When I asked him for proof, he was silent. Looking back, I realized how blind I was. I put him in the friend zone and it drove him crazy. But at the time, I didn't really care. He even annoyed me. He insisted on joining my Skype calls with Charlie. He was told no because it was rare for me to talk to Charlie between his work schedules and my studies. Every time he refused. Joshua was texting me like, if you were really my friend, you'd let me join. Then 30 minutes later, sorry, I was childish. All my online friends, including Joshua, knew I was a big gamer. I had started a new online game, but I had avoided telling Joshua about it so he wouldn't follow me. He had already done it 2 times, and he always insisted that we play together. I had found a super guild that raided twice a week. Everything was going very well until he learned through a mutual friend in which I was. He signed up, joined my guild, under the same alias he always used. Impossible to miss it. He would start talking behind my back, harassing the girls in the group and pissing everyone off. And he thought he was funny. Every sentence was a rotten reference. He would interrupt our raids by landing on the vocal and blasting the music. He got kicked out and frankly, he had been looking for it. After that, I decided it was too much. I called him on Skype and ended our friendship. He didn't take it well. He insulted me, threatened to spill all my secrets to my friends, told me he was going to destroy my life. I hung up, blocked him, and thanked heaven I never had to talk to him again. But I had forgotten one crucial detail. He knew where I lived. I had been avoiding him for a month, spending time with my guild. I had no desire to see him again. Then, 3 weeks after our last discussion, something disturbing happened. I suffer from insomnia. At night, I often look at the streetlights out the window, and that's where I saw him. Josh was standing under the lamppost closest to my house. My room overlooks a small balcony that is easy to climb thanks to the legend hose. I have already sneaked in there myself. I often leave the window open because it is too hot. At night, I had no fan, and the AC was down. But that week it was very cold, so I closed the window. Thank God, 15 minutes later I saw it approaching, start climbing. I was paralyzed with fear, but relieved that the window was locked, otherwise he could have gotten in easily. I turned off my screen, hid in the dark, teeth clenched, shaking, trying not to make a sound. I couldn't leave my room. The floorboards creaked. He could have heard me from the balcony. It is also impossible to scream. My mother was out drinking and my little sister was sleeping at our grandparents' house. I was alone and I watched it. Approaching the window, he tried to open it. In vain. He just stood there looking into my room. It became a game of nerves. Every minute was an eternity. I had this awful feeling that if he heard me or saw me, he was going to break the window and get in. Around 5 o'clock in the morning, my mother's car pulled into the driveway. Total relief came over me. She saw him. She started screaming. I heard him come back down at full speed. At first, she thought I had invited her, but when she realized what was happening, she took me in her arms. Relieved that I was safe, we called the police. But they said they couldn't do anything because there had been no attempted assault. Today, it's been a year and a half. I've never heard from Joshua again. It disappeared overnight, and frankly, it might be better that way. Wherever you are, Joshua, I hope you found help and moved on, because you were 2 fingers away from doing something irreversible. Let me tell you a story. The other day, I was just hanging out on my computer. Nothing special, classic teen stuff. I'm almost always connected to Skype while I'm on the computer in case a friend wants to call me out of the blue. So it didn't really surprise me when I got a Skype call while browsing Facebook. What surprised me, however, was that I couldn't see who was calling me. There was no name, just a blank space where the ID of the person trying to reach you normally appears. I thought it must be one of my friends playing a joke on me, so I told myself too bad and I hung up. There was no one there. The screen was completely black, so I threw a halo. No answer. I couldn't hear anything in my headphones. Not even the usual background noise you get when someone's microphone is on but they're not talking. I decided to type a message, just a little halo, to still see nothing. I was going to hang up, but for some reason I can't explain. Instead of ending the call, I just opened another window, and just as I was going back to Facebook, a message arrived on Skype: "Don't walk away from me." Then I started to freak out a little and I said, "Who is it?" And suddenly the sound came on and I heard a muffled laugh like some kind of wheezing. The picture was still black, but it flickered for a moment. I couldn't make out anything. It was like trying to memorize a single image in a movie projected at full speed. Almost impossible. I was convinced that it had to be a friend trying to scare me. I have to say it worked. I was petrified. So this time I replied in a more aggressive tone, "Are you going to tell me who the fuck you are?" And then the muffled laughter resumed. Except this time it was coming from behind me. I was sure it wasn't in my helmet. I suddenly turned around. But it was too dark to see anything. With the Skype screen still black and my dark wallpaper, there wasn't enough light in the room to discern anything. I figured I was getting paranoid and the sound was coming from the headphones, so I turned back to my screen and there I saw a little faint light on the beautiful Skype video. It seemed to be slowly getting bigger and bigger. I approached the screen, intrigued. Then a human head passed in front of the light. To my horror, it was my own face. As a girl, the creepiest thing with online games is clearly the weird interactions with random guys. Many of my friends outright hide their gender with a neutral nickname, no profile picture, and never speak in vocally if there are guys around. And since this is the case all the time, you can imagine. I've never tried to hide my true identity online. And above all, I wasn't going to let shady guys force me to hide. That didn't stop me from receiving really disturbing messages or experiencing downright creepy interactions. This is one of the worst. I'm on PC, so most of the time I go through Discords to play and chat. You can't get random messages from complete strangers like that. Unless you share a server. And since I'm on a lot of servers related to the games I like, I sometimes get DMs that are not clear. My favorite game is Dead by Daylight. For those who don't know, it's an asymmetrical horror game where one person plays a killer and the others have to survive and escape. Suffice it to say that it attracts crazy people. Some insist on playing only the killer, never the survivor, and they become ultra bullshit. That's how I came across a player who played the clown all the time. I hate clowns, like really to the point that I couldn't even go see this with my Stephen King fanboy friend. My mother loves to remember that I was traumatized as a child by a clown at a birthday party. And in Dead by Daylight, the clown is a real horror, face dripping with dirty makeup, big belly, human finger hanging on his belt as a trophy. Anyway, when this player started playing with our band, I wasn't hot, but my buddies loved him. He played the clown vocal role with a creepy once while stalking us. Even the toughest guys screamed like little girls. It was pretty funny as long as it wasn't me chasing him at the end of a session when everyone was like, okay, I'll stop there or I'll have nightmares. I get one DM Discord from the guy, "You were super fun to hunt." I replied politely, "Haha, thank you. I hope I wasn't having too much fun hunting." And then I see he starts writing a message. The writing notification remains active for several minutes. I say to myself, please don't be creepy, don't be creepy. Finally, he just sent me 5 words. I would have liked it. Whether it was real was already creepy, but what really upset me was that he had clearly typed, erased, rewritten for several minutes. Finally, what did he mean at the base? What did he erase? I preferred not to know. The next day, we give them another game. Somebody says, "Hey, the clown guy is online, we invite him." I'm sorry, but I didn't want to spoil the atmosphere. Everyone seemed to like it, so I didn't say anything. He joins the vocal and direct. He says, "Ruby is here tonight." Except that I was already in the vocal. He knew very well that I was there, so he asked the question just to hear me answer creepy. And that night he didn't let go of me before. He was going after everyone equally, but here he was targeting me. I was unaware of all the other survivors. He wouldn't let go of me, and once he killed me, he would just hang around letting the others escape without pressure. The first time the others didn't notice. In the third set they started capturing, "Hey man, stop tunneling, Ruby. You're ruining the game." He ignored them and started blowing really hard into the microphone. Not the accidental kind of breath, no, a heavy, unhealthy, almost excited breath. We could hear his pleasure in stalking me so much that some threw salacious blacks on his condition after a particularly disgusting round. I begged my buddies to fire him. They eventually left him. Vocal and game. Relief, he had made me mad, angry, on the verge of tears. We played 1 or 2 more games with random killers. And then I went to bed, but I forgot to do something. I forgot to block it. The next morning I wake up to over 50 notifications, Discords. I click, it was him. I know I shouldn't have read it, but it was like an accident. Horrible but impossible to ignore. I remember some of the messages in a watered-down version. "You're happy now, you can't beat my killer, so you ask your friends to fire me, you've seen your face. You should consider yourself lucky that I'm interested in you. You're going to die alone, cold and forgotten. Do you think you're safe?" I asked around. "I know what city you live in. I could meet you tomorrow. I'm not sure I'll hunt you down in the game, and in real life you'll beg to die. My children will touch each other looking at the trophies I will take from your body." And it went on and on. They talked about hacking, finding my friends, my neighborhood, my full name. I ended up blocking it and installing one VPN and was offline for a few days. I hope he was bluffing, but this is probably the most terrifying experience I've ever had online. So, a piece of advice, especially if you're a girl, as soon as a guy gets ugly, block him right away. It will prevent you from experiencing what I experienced a few years ago. I was on a Discord server. True creepy stories, people told of their paranormal or strange experiences. Most were cliches, like I saw a shadow at the foot of my bed, like a failed horror movie. But sometimes some stories stood out without any supernatural elements, just realistic and terrifying. There's one I've never forgotten. The author explained that he was still young when it happened, but just thinking about it as an adult, it was stressing him out. His father died of an overdose when he was a child. He lived alone with his mother in a small apartment not far from his grandmother's house. His mother sometimes went out with men, hoping to find a father-in-law for him. That night she had a date, and since her grandmother was working, he stayed home alone. He was 9 or 10 years old. He said, "Don't panic." At the time there was Yu-Gi. Oh, as long as he had his cards and cartoons, he wouldn't move from his couch. That night he was playing with his cards and watching TV when he heard a knock on the window. Nothing strange, it was a ground floor apartment, no need to climb. But pulling back the curtain, he saw the face of a complete stranger. Not a neighbor, not an uncle, not a stranger. He stepped back, the curtains have closed and there's spit, the sound of green exploding, and then another splinters fall on the carpet. He shook his cards, ran to the back door and rushed to a neighbor's house, screaming and banging on the door. Fortunately they let him in. He told them, trembling. They called the police and then his mother. The cops arrived very quickly and searched the area. When her mother arrived, they all went back to the apartment and there, a cop approached her with a plastic bag. She turned pale, then she knelt down and hugged her son to her while crying. The neighbor just said, "My God." After that, they spent a week at grandma's. And it wasn't because a broken window took so long to fix. In reality, the apartment has been fully reinforced, new doors, new locks, cameras, all paid for by the grandparents. And it was much later that the author understood why what the cop had shown his mother in that bag was a picture of him asleep in his bed. It had been taken recently, his mother knew, because she had a new haircut or a new sheet she had just pulled. It meant that the intruder had already broken into the apartment during the night to photograph him while he was sleeping. He'd probably made a collection of children of potential victims, and that night he had chosen her. What makes my blood run cold is thinking about that exact moment. The obsessed guy couldn't resist anymore and he came back. They seemed to find some peace when they learned that a man with a very similar modus operandi had been arrested and extradited to another state. He didn't know the whole story until he was an adult. There was no Hollywood conclusion, just a raw, brutal fact. This story disturbed me enough to leave the server. Sometimes, it's not the idea of ghosts or monsters but real-life horrors that stay with you.